Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 50 based on novel. So let's start. It's night. On the night sky, there are already bright stars, like a silver plate of snow-white moon, which is throwing out pieces of moonlight, making the earth at night shine like day. On a grass slope, Xiao Yan is sitting cross-legged on a bluestone. The energy of heaven and earth in the sky space slowly enters Xiao Yang's body along Xiao Yang's breath, and then turns into a drop of pure fighting water through the refining of different fire, which flows into the cyclone space in Xiao Yang's body. The fierce bombardment during the day made Xiao Yan consume a lot of energy. At the moment, although he sat here for a long time, he still didn't make Xiao Yang recover completely. A moment later, with Xiao Yang's eyelids trembling slightly, Xiao Yang slowly retreated from the cultivation state, raised his eyes and looked at the stars in the sky. A smile slowly appeared in the corners of Xiao Yang's mouth. Then Xiao Yang's palm was out of thin air. With a flash of light on the ring between his fingers, a dark and ancient ring appeared in Xiao Yang's palm. This ring is owned by Haimu, who has been refined and died. However, now with the death of his master, this ring should also belong to Xiao Yang. Looking at the ring in the palm of his hand, Xiao Yang's mouth slowly lifted a radian, his heart read a move, the soul power in the center of his eyebrows gushed out in an instant, and flew away towards the ring in the palm of his hand. Bang! With a deep bang, Xiao Yang's face changed in an instant. He originally intended to leave a soul mark on this ring, but unexpectedly, he was blocked back by another force at the moment of contact. After some exploration, Xiao Yang couldn't help frowning slightly. According to principle, since Haimu is dead, the soul mark on the ring should dissipate. But what's the situation at the moment? After thinking for a long time, Xiao Yang shook his head reluctantly. Now it seems that he can only break it with his own soul power. Thinking of doing it, Xiao Yang immediately moved his mind. In the center of his eyebrows, the majestic soul force swept out madly and quickly condensed in the void in front of Xiao Yang. The terrible soul power, under extreme condensation, turned into a hammer with its shape faintly visible. With Xiao Yang's heart moving, the hammer also immediately smashed at Naji with terrible soul pressure. Boom! After an invisible roar, an invisible force burst out on the dark ring, forming a layer of soul shield on the surface of the ring to protect the ring. When the soul hammer bombarded the surface of the ring, the invisible shield quickly spread out invisible ripples, removing most of the power contained in the hammer, and the remaining small part was taken over by it. Xiao Yang was surprised to see that the ring was safe after his attack. The ring in front of him is really good. It has such strange functions, but it can't make Xiao Yang give up for it alone. Hey, the master is dead. A Naji can still fight hard. I want to see how long it can last with this remnant soul. With a sneer, Xiao Yang's heart thought came out again, and then the soul hammer flew again. A heavy hammer hit down with a hot vigorous wind. Bang! Seeing this, Xiao Yang's eyes coagulated again, but then he turned into a cold hum and said with a sneer. One hammer won't work, then come again. Drink. With a low drink, Xiao Yang's heart moved. In the center of his eyebrows, the surging soul power suddenly poured out madly, and all of it merged into the soul hammer in front of him. Then, with the order from Xiao Yang's heart, the soul hammer with more ferocious and terrible momentum smashed down against the dark ring with more terrible momentum. Boom! 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 After a long time, I saw the layer of soul shield on the surface of Naji, which was weakened, but still firm. Xiao Yang's eyebrows also frowned. Unexpectedly, it was just a Naji, which would make him so hard, which really annoyed him. Damn it, what kind of broken thing is it? How strong it is. I don't believe it today. People are dead. How big waves can a ring turn? Drink. Break it for me. With a fierce drink, Xiao Yang was really annoyed by the ring in front of him. He stretched out his hand and directly held the huge hammer condensed by the power of the soul in the void in front of him in the palm of his hand. Then he rolled up his sleeve, raised his arm, and blew it down with a hard hammer. Bang! Click! First there was a violent bang, but before Xiao Yanyu blew out the second hammer, the soul shield on the ring burst in a crisp click. Seeing this, Xiao Yang couldn't help but smoke at the corners of his mouth. He twisted his head and scolded. His grandmother, I really owe you a beating. I knew you would explode with a hammer. There would be so many things. It's best not to disappoint me, otherwise I will burn you into a piece of scrap iron. Pointing to the Naji in his hand, Xiao Yang scolded fiercely. Only then did Xiao Yang scatter the soul hammer in his hand, leaving only a wisp of soul, leaving his own soul mark in the Naji. Then, he moved his mind and entered it. As soon as he entered the ring, Xiao Yang's face changed rapidly. Although he said just now, everything in the ring is really good. Getting everything to the outside world is enough to cause a world-shaking storm. However, after reading it again, although I was shocked, there were still very few things that could really be used by Xiao Yang. Among them, there are all kinds of skills, fighting skills, pills, and all kinds of heaven and earth treasures, but most of them are just some unpopular materials that Xiao Yang can't use. Even if they are rare, they can only be auctioned or exchanged as money. Naturally, there are quite a lot of things that make Xiao Yang's heart. Under Xiao Yang's exploration, there are also several volumes of Imperial Pill, which is just the most lacking for Xiao Yang today. You're welcome. Xiao Yang puts away everything he lacks, whether it's what he lacks or not. Now the ring belongs to him, and the things in it naturally belong to him. Whether it's good or not, it's all his. After all, who would dislike his treasure? Under Xiao Yang's careful exploration, he finally found what he most cares about this time. In the deep part of the ring space, there is a wooden box hidden in a slightly hidden place. The wooden box is made of superior Shenling wood. Xiao Yang can think that this thing must be extremely valuable black wood. Sure enough, after Xiao Yang opened the wooden box, he saw that a blue and white jade slip was lying quietly in the wooden box. When Xiao Yang injected his soul power into it, he saw a line of big words that made people's blood boil at the moment. Italian level low-level fighting skill, broken heart palm. Italian level low-level fighting skill, broken heart palm. Xiao Yang looked at the 9 soul-shaking characters emerging from the void in front of him, and his heart was full of surprise. On the one hand, he went all out to open the ring. On the other hand, the most important thing is to find Haimu's proud Italian-level fighting skill. The Italian-level fighting skills surpass the terror of human-level fighting skills and spirit-level fighting skills. This kind of fighting skills is not a small semi-emperor of Xiao Yang. Even the more powerful Yuan Huang and Yuanzong will never let go. Although there are a lot of treasures in the whole Naji, if you really say it, the jade slip in Xiao Yang's hand is enough to compare all the things in the Naji. From here, we can see how precious this Italian-level fighting skill is. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Yang slowly put the jade slips in his hand back into the wooden box. His mind swept the whole Naji again, hoping to find another Italian-level fighting skill of catching heaven claws, or something more precious. It's just a pity that good luck will never land on his head again and again. The pie also depends on his own hands. Xiao Yang's harvest of this war will end here. Xiao Yang was not discouraged by this. He was satisfied to find a volume of Italy-level fighting skills he wanted. As for others, there would be none. After all, he still knows the truth that he can't chew too much. Only when he knows satisfaction, he won't be dazzled by desire. This is also the word Xiao Yang has been telling himself. After 3 days of cultivation, Xiao Yang's breath returned to its peak again. Moreover, because of the harvest of the ring 3 days ago, Xiao Yang's complexion looked more ruddy than before, and his breath became more and more thick. Seeing the two of Luo, Xiao Yang talked with him lightly. The 2 elders also knew that it was time for Xiao Yang to leave, so they didn't say more. Only when Xiao Yang could bring them an expected surprise after the medicine refining master's meeting. Okay, go. Remember, you must come back with the champion and thank me. Xiao Yang and Luo Laro stood in the void. Luo Laro opened the space channel connecting the outside courtyard, then faced Xiao Yang and smiled slowly. Hearing this, Xiao Yang nodded and smiled. His eyes slowly swept over the 2 elders, showing a respectful smile on his face. He hugged his fists, arched at them, and said with a loud smile, 2 elders, I'll leave now. If I have something to do in the future, I'll bother you again. Qingmu burst into laughter when he heard the speech, slapped Xiao Yang on the shoulder and said with a smile, well, what will happen in the future? It's so close. If you miss the old man, I'll shout outside and naturally welcome you in, ha. Xiao Yang smiled and turned around to step into the space channel. At the moment when Xiao Yang entered the channel, Xiao Yang's figure appeared again in the dilapidated courtyard in the wild city outside. Looking at the familiar scenes outside, Xiao Yang once again raised a smile around his mouth. In the final analysis, only here is the stage where he can really show himself. A moment later, Xiao Yang walked slowly on the streets of the wild ancient city, listening to the words of the people around him. Xiao Yang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly, and a bitter smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. At the moment, all these people are talking about his participation in the herbalist meeting with Mo Zhai. At this time, Xiao Yang and Mo Zhai seem to have become the most famous 2 people in the wild ancient city. However, More words heard in Xiao Yang's ears are disdain and sneer at him. Among the people, he is just a coward who is as timid as a mouse and dare not come forward to fight. In this regard, Xiao Yang is too lazy to explain, because the more explanations, the more people will mistakenly think you are really cowardly. In contrast, it's better to prove it with facts. At this moment, there was still a moment before the beginning of the herbalist meeting. Therefore, Xiao Yang was not in a hurry. He walked slowly and regularly in the street until he was broken by a sudden riot. Suddenly, at the end of the crowd, there was a sound of fighting over the destruction of houses. Xiao Yang was indifferent to this. After all, this kind of thing is very common in the mainland. He doesn't need to take care of it, let alone see it more. However, just as Xiao Yang continued to move forward regardless, a figure fell from the sky, stepped on the street in front of Xiao Yang, and forcibly shook the bluestone road in front of him into a pile of powder. The figure fell to the ground. Without hesitation, it flew by Xiao Yang's side in an instant, and quickly flew away outside the wild ancient city like running for his life. But at the moment when the figure flew past Xiao Yang suddenly stopped at this moment, stood on the ground, looked straight ahead, and a smile slowly appeared at the corners of his mouth. Hihi, unexpectedly, I met an old friend as soon as I came out. When Xiao Yang's voice fell, on the void above Xiao Yang's head, several figures flew by quickly. The terrible speed made the people below fall to the ground by the oncoming hurricane. When the public saw that Xiao Yang was safe and sound under the hurricane, they all looked at Xiao Yang with surprise, and their eyes were full of shock. Those who flew over their heads just now are genuine semi-imperial strongmen. The storm brought by their actions is enough to blow an ordinary saint-fighting strongman away, but the young man in front of him can stand still. What kind of terror should his strength be? After a few breaths, at a distance of 100 feet behind Xiao Yang, at the moment, 4 figures are surrounding an old man who is embarrassed and weak with blood breath at the corners of his mouth. The retreat of all parties has been blocked by all the 4 semi-imperial strongmen. At present, the old man has no way to escape. Ha ha. You can run very well. Don't stop, keep running, I want to see where you can go. A 3-star and half emperor still wants to escape from the 4 of us. You overestimate yourself. Ha ha ha. At the moment, one of the strongest of the 4, who has reached the midterm of the 4-star half emperor, is looking at the embarrassed old man in the field with scornful eyes. Qin Zhong, I still advise you to be sensible and take the initiative to hand over the Void Thunder Pool post. I promise I will never kill you, but otherwise, I will never be soft-hearted. Before the words fell, the old man's body suddenly burst out. His right palm spread out and bombarded Qin Zhong's chest. He didn't mean to give Qin Zhong a chance to speak. Seeing this, Qin Zhong suddenly changed his face. With his strength and the state at the moment, he was not the opponent of the man in front of him, so he had to try his best to avoid it. However, just as Qin Zhong was about to escape, the other 3.5 strong emperors set off quickly and blocked Qin Zhong in place, and the blow from the air also hit Qin Zhong's chest. Pooh! Immediately, Qin Zhong's face suddenly turned red. A mouthful of bright red blood gushed out of his mouth, and his breath weakened rapidly. However, just as the old man was about to give Qin Zhong a second palm, among the 4 people, there was a sudden flash of light, Qin Zhong's body disappeared instantly, and a cold voice came out slowly. Which hand did you hurt him with just now? Which hand did you hurt him with just now? The cold words, without any emotion, seemed to come from the 9 hell, which made people feel a burst of creepy. At the moment when Xiao Yang's words came out, the temperature between heaven and earth suddenly became extremely cold. All the people who came to see the excitement outside the court felt a deep sense of terror and cold at the moment as if they were in a cold cellar. When they saw Xiao Yang's face, someone immediately recognized that the man in black in front of them was the guy who had fought against the hurricane in the street before. At the moment, it seems that this young guy is also a semi-emperor. At the thought of this, there was a sudden sound of air conditioning in the crowd outside the field. There was a dignified color on everyone's face. It seems that the young man in black is not an ordinary person. If you can reach the rank of half-emperor at such an age, how can you be an ordinary person in this wild ancient city? Tut tut. It seems that these 4 are going to fail. Among the crowd, an older man saw this scene in the field, immediately sighed, slowly opened his mouth and smiled. As soon as the old man spoke, the surrounding people immediately looked at the old man, and the old man smiled again. The essence of his old eyes twinkled and looked at Xiao Yang in the field. Then his old eyes narrowed and smiled. Ha ha! This young man is by no means ordinary. If you say it, you may be surprised. Hearing the old man's vague words, everyone immediately made a noise, But the old man just didn't hear it, but the smile on his mouth gradually expanded. After the good film was engraved, he just hugged his fist and saluted Xiao Yang. At the same time, he slowly laughed. This elder has disappeared in the city for a month, and he is also the one who keeps talking, laughing, and mocking in this month. He is the ultimate source of the forced postponement of the herbalist meeting, Rock Owl. This remark was like a bolt from the blue. Everyone outside was stunned. The black-robed youth who saved Qin Zhong just now was the timid Rock Owl in their mouth. In an instant, everyone turned their eyes to Xiao Yang. Even the 4 semi-imperial strongmen in the field also looked at Xiao Yang with surprised eyes. Is the man in front of him really the Rock Owl who has disappeared for a month? Xiao Yang didn't pay much attention to the eyes of the people in the field, but showed a slightly surprised smile at the corners of his mouth, looked at the old man, smiled and asked. The old gentleman has a unique insight. How can you see that I'm a Rock Owl? When the old man heard the speech, his hands were more respectful. His old eyes looked at Xiao Yang and said with a smile. My lord praised me falsely. It's not that the old man knows people with insight. He only recognized me because he had the honor to see adults before. As soon as Xiao Yang smiled, he didn't ask more questions on this issue. It's no big deal to recognize it. Just now, his focus is on the 4 semi-emperor strong men in front of him. Looking down at Qin Zhong with weak breath in his arms, Xiao Yang frowned slightly. In his eyes, a trace of cold slowly emerged. Although Qin Zhong's breath in his arms was weak, he was immediately excited at the first sight of Xiao Yang. When his weak body twisted forcibly, he wanted to get up from Xiao Yang's arms, but after all, he could only be helplessly placed on the ground slowly by Xiao Yang. When Qin Zhong just wanted to say something, the words that had reached his mouth did not need to be spit out. Xiao Yang casually stuffed a pill the size of a longan into Qin Zhong's mouth. As soon as the pill was taken into the mouth, it turned into a pure energy flood and quickly poured into Qin Zhong's body. Wherever the power of the pill passed, Qin Zhong's strength recovered rapidly with a speed visible to the naked eye, which also surprised Qin Zhong's eyes. Seeing this, Xiao Yang smiled and didn't explain much. He just nodded to reassure him. Then he stood up, turned slowly and looked at the 4 semi-emperor strong men. The 4 semi-emperor strong men obviously have heard of Xiao Yang's name. At the beginning, the ancestor of the Li family was a strong man at the level of 6-star semi-emperor, but they still couldn't get any benefits before the black-robed youth. This makes them deeply know the power of Xiao Yang, but now that they have reached this point, how can they be reconciled to seeing the Void Thunder Pool post close in front of them? While Xiao Yang looked at the 4 semi-emperors, the most powerful 4-star semi-emperor also looked at Xiao Yang with a cold face and said with a sneer. Why, you're the Rock Owl? After hiding for a month, you can't help coming out at last. However, I remember that you also have a Void Thunder Pool post from Li Gan. Now, it's time for me to keep it for you. Facing the old man in black robe opposite him, Xiao Yang sneered. The palm under the sleeve robe slowly raised, and the white palm looked particularly dazzling in the sun. The heart read a move, and the hand flashed with a light. A bright silver post suddenly appeared in Xiao Yang's hand. Xiao Yang's face was expressionless, his eyes looked at the old man indifferently, and his tone was still extremely cold. He slowly opened his mouth and said, Now, tell me which hand you hurt him with just now. For Xiao Yang's extremely cold words, the old man was still plain. His eyes stared at the empty thunder pool post in Xiao Yang's hands, and said in a relaxed tone, I know that you have a very powerful fighting skill, which is enough to make you resist the 6-star and half emperors. But now, I have 4.5 emperors here. What do you think is your qualification to talk to me like this? As soon as the voice fell, the old man took a fierce step forward and stepped out. At the same time, a terrible momentum swept over Xiao Yang suddenly. Seeing this, Xiao Yang's eyes became colder and colder. He snorted coldly in his mouth. His steps were also half a step forward. At his feet, a terrible momentum no weaker than the old man was also suddenly pressed against him. When the two touched, the old man's face changed instantly. He didn't expect that when he suppressed Xiao Yang with his strength, the other party was not inferior to him at all. The strength of the Rock Owl is really terrible. At this time, the other 3 semi-emperors behind the old man also saw that the situation was wrong. They came forward one after another and stepped out towards Xiao Yang. There was no doubt that the momentum of the 3-star semi-emperors was revealed at this moment. However, just when the old man thought that this would suppress Xiao Yang once again gave a cold hum in his mouth, shocked his body, and the momentum in his body burst out instantly. At that time, a more terrible momentum than the four people combined was that they swept out of Xiao Yang's body madly, crushing the momentum of the four semi-imperial strong men. In the streets surrounded by crowds, several shadows are standing in them at the moment. Between heaven and earth, they have been filled with two distinct terrorist momentum. At the moment, opposite Xiao Yang, the four figures are doing their best to resist Xiao Yang's momentum, and these four are all semi-emperor strong. The four semi-emperors are now defeated by Xiao Yang alone. After this war, the four semi-emperors may no longer be able to gain a foothold in this wild ancient city. At the moment, the four semi-emperors all looked at Xiao Yang with a frightened face. They all felt very dignified in their hearts. They could not imagine that the strength of the rock owl in front of them would be so terrible. As a 3-star semi-emperor, even if the four of them fight together, the momentum can't hold Xiao Yang down at all. At this moment, the four semi-emperors finally can't help but doubt Xiao Yang's strength. Is the strength of the black-robed youth in front of him really only 3-star and half emperors? Then why is the strength he broke out inferior to even some 6-star and half emperors? At this moment, even those who came to watch outside the scene were full of horror. The rock owl in the field, even with the power of one person, pressed 3 half-emperor strong men of the same level, and the most terrible thing is that among the other party's people, there is a 4-star half-emperor level terror. At this time, they can't even believe that what they see at the moment is really a reality, not an illusion. In this regard, the old man who recognized Xiao Yang earlier had a plain smile on his face. He grew up in this wild ancient city when he was young. He didn't see too many major rights and wrongs. The scene in front of him seemed unacceptable to outsiders, but he understood that Xiao Yang's ability to press the 4 semi-imperial strong men was nothing more than Xiao Yang's own effort. Xiao Yang in the field looked at the expression on the faces of the 4 people, and once again gave a cold hum. His straight body tilted forward fiercely. The momentum of terror also rolled down with the overwhelming threat of terror. For a moment, the 4 semi-imperial strong men were immediately crushed by Xiao Yang. Their bodies couldn't help flying backward and falling to the ground. The 4 of them climbed up in confusion, and their steps gradually retreated. Obviously, they knew that they would not be defeated by Xiao Yang, and there would be no good results if they stayed. Therefore, they had a sense of retreat in their hearts. However, they want to go, but Xiao Yang won't let them go easily. Standing in the same place, Xiao Yang's body suddenly flashed, and the 4.5 emperors saw this, and their faces changed suddenly. They didn't hesitate. The 4 people jumped suddenly, and the soles of their feet stepped on the void. When their body flashed, they quickly fled in 4 directions. Rock Owl, although your strength is not weak, if the 4 of us want to leave, you can't stop it. The words came out. Qin Zhong, who had recovered behind Xiao Yang, also stood up, looked at the direction the 4 people left, frowned slightly, and advised Xiao Yang. Brother Yang Xiao, I think I'd better forget it. If these 4 people leave separately, they really can't be stopped. Looking at the direction of the 4 people leaving, Xiao Yang slowly showed a sneer at the corners of his mouth, turned his head to Qin Zhong, and said with a faint smile, "Hehe, as long as Brother Qin stays here at ease, I want to see how fast these 4 people can be." As soon as the voice fell, Xiao Yang didn't wait for Qin Zhong to speak again. His body flashed in an instant. The next moment, he already appeared in the sky. His heart moved, and his body's avatar quickly condensed in the void. He met with the avatar for a moment. Xiao Yang didn't hesitate. He took the Tianjue step at his feet. With a flash of his body, he chased a guy with relatively weak strength among the 3 stars and half emperors. As a human body fighting skill, the speed of Tianjuebu is needless to say. Xiao Yang was only able to compete with the 7-star and half emperor at the beginning. Now Xiao Yang's strength is growing. I'm afraid it's as fast as the 8-star and half emperor. At this moment, once Tianjue step was performed, Xiao Yang's speed was like a meteor chasing the moon. He immediately crossed the void and appeared in front of the 3-star half-emperor. However, before the 3-star half-emperor had something, Xiao Yang had already punched him hard and hit him on his chest before he had fully reacted. After one punch, the body of Sanqing Bandi also fell from the void. At the next moment, Xiao Yang's body flickered again. After 2 heavy fists in a row, another 2 figures fell into the void like a dead body, smashed it on the earth below, and smashed a huge pit several feet deep. But just after the 3 people fell into the sky, on a void farther away from Xiao Yang, a startling explosion came suddenly. The sound spread over the whole wild ancient city, making all the strong people in the city suddenly change their faces at this moment. The power of the sound is really not weak. Under the perception of some high-level semi-emperors, The complexion became ugly at this moment, because the Big Bang was caused by the self-explosion of a semi-emperor. At the moment, in the city, under this shocking explosion, thousands of people are shocked. Everyone feels an unparalleled shock in their heart. Unexpectedly, a semi-imperial strongman blew himself up over the wild ancient city. At this moment, all the semi-imperialist strongmen moved quickly. They must pay attention to such semi-imperialist events. As for Xiao Yan, at the moment of the explosion, the smile at the corners of his mouth gradually expanded. Because the earth-shaking explosion was caused by his avatar. In order not to hurt the ancient city below, Xiao Yan also forcibly suppressed the power in his body when his avatar exploded. Otherwise, the wild ancient city really doesn't know what big event will be caused by him. Xiao Yan flew down with a sneer at the corners of his mouth. He saw a huge pit on the earth below. He moved and kicked down from high above. Boom! With a loud noise, the huge pit deepened again, and Xiao Yan threw a body with extremely weak breath out of the huge pit and threw it in front of the onlookers like garbage. I remember asking you before. It was Qin Zhong who hurt his hand. Ah! Since you don't want to say, I have to guess by myself. The voice of cold words without any emotion fell. Xiao Yang's palm trembled slightly in the frightened eyes of the old man, and a gorgeous fire suddenly appeared in his palm. However, just when Xiao Yang was about to start, a familiar surprise voice suddenly came to his ear. Ha ha, Rock Owl, it's you. I thought something had happened here. Ha ha ha, you've made it easy for me to find this month. His subordinates made a slight movement, and Xiao Yang looked up. At this time, dozens of people had occupied the sky. At the moment, except for those familiar figures, others looked at Xiao Yang with curious eyes. These people are all people who came to watch the medicine refining master's meeting. Moreover, their strength is at the level of half-emperor. Among them, the weakest one has reached the level of 3-star half-emperor. It seems that Xiao Yang's strength is really not enough in front of these people. Hehe, President Jiyu Li, I haven't seen you in January. I really miss you. As soon as Xiao Yang saw the old figure above the void, a smile suddenly appeared on his face, and he also said with a loud smile. When the half-strong emperor heard that the person below was the rock owl who had disappeared for a month, everyone couldn't help showing a look of surprise in front of them. Then, while looking at each other, he redefined Xiao Yang's image. It has always been said that Xiao Yang was afraid to attend the herbalist meeting because of his cowardice, but after all, they are only known to ordinary people. They are semi-emperor strong people, but they don't believe it at all. However, they have always been curious about Xiao Yang's sudden disappearance. At the moment, when they see Xiao Yang, they naturally have good names in their hearts. Jiyu Li also smiled when he heard the speech, and his eyes fell on the old man at Xiao Yang's feet. A look of surprise flashed in his eyes. After a long time, he began to ask with some doubts. This is... However, without waiting for Jiyu Li's voice to fall, another figure came quickly from the end of the street in the distance. Seeing this, Xiao Yang immediately smiled and said, "It seems that Brother Qin has almost recovered. Qin Zhong is still near Xiao Yang's future." The sound of Qinglong's words is already coming out. Qin Zhong looks at Xiao Yang with gratitude and laughs. Ha ha ha, thanks to Brother Yang Xiao's pill. Otherwise, I don't know when I can recover from this guy's slap. At this point, it is unnecessary for Xiao Yang to say more. Jiyu Li also understands that this matter is probably caused by Qin Zhong. After laughing with Qin Zhong, Xiao Yang raised his eyes to Jiyu Li, and then glanced at the semi-emperor strongmen in the sky. He smiled at Jiyu Li and said, "Hehe, it's nothing. It's just a small matter, but it has been solved. I just don't know how to make so many semi-emperor strong people meet together." Xiao Yang's words came out, and all the semi-imperial strong men above the void couldn't help laughing at the humorous words. Of course, they didn't come to meet Xiao Yang. If it hadn't been for the terrible big explosion just now, they wouldn't have been disturbed and came here. At this moment, on the horizon, the only one who doesn't like Xiao Yang and has a gloomy face is Mo Zhai and Hu Laogay in the corner around him. At the moment, Mo Zhai was already angry when he saw Xiao Yang standing unharmed in the wild ancient city. He was seriously injured by Luo Laro's blow a month ago. He counted all these accounts on Xiao Yang's head. If it hadn't been for Xiao Yang, I'm afraid the Medicine Refining Association would have been over by now, and the Medicine Refining Guild in the wild ancient city should also be under their control. But because of the rock owl in front of him, their original perfect plan was broken by him again and again, but what he hated most was that Xiao Yang's medicine refining technique was so terrible. At a young age, he already has such terrible strength, and he has what kind of heaven and earth fire and unique fighting skills. No matter which one, he is moved by it. Since Xiao Yan came to this wild ancient city, he first crossed the gap between 3 stars and fought 6.5 emperors. Then, in full view of the public, he summoned Luo Lao, who was awed by everyone, win the second order herbalist badge in the herbalist guild. Looking at these things carefully, it seems that Xiao Yang came to the medicine refining masters meeting from the beginning. He was rampant all the way, and no one could stop him. Even the 7.5-star emperor he sent to kill Xiao Yang was beaten by meat buns. There was no return. In front of Xiao Yang, he looks like a 10,000-year-old monster in a tender skin bag. Bastard. Even if you come back, what can you do? When the conference starts, I will let you lose at your feet. Compared with Mo Zhai, the old monster who on one side saw more thoroughly than him. From the simple first glance of Xiao Yang, he had noticed that Xiao Yang's breath had reached the peak level of the late 3-star emperor, and it was only 1 step away from the 4-star emperor. Mo Zhai, did you find the difference between that rock owl and that 1 month ago? I always feel that there is something wrong with him. At the moment, Hu Laogei's eyes narrowed slightly. He stared at Xiao Yang and asked Mo Zhai. On the same boat with Mo Zhai, Hu Laogei naturally knows about finding 2 people in front of him, so he doesn't dare to underestimate Xiao Yang. Now when he asks, he doesn't even want to let go of any detail of Xiao Yang. Mo Zhai also frowned slightly when he heard the speech. Since Hu Laogei said so, even if he would rather believe it, he would never believe it. Immediately, Mo Zhai also hurriedly cast his eyes on Xiao Yang, moved his mind, quickly expanded his soul power, and carefully surrounded Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang, who was talking and laughing with Jiu Li and others, felt the soul power around him, but the corners of his mouth slowly aroused a sneer and let him slowly wrap his whole body. After swallowing the soul power of Haimu, Xiao Yang's soul power is no weaker than that of Mo Zhai. Therefore, it is impossible for Mo Zhai to explore himself without checking. Ha ha, Rock Owl, since you have come back now, this herbalist meeting should start. After all, so many of us have been waiting for you for only a month. After talking and laughing, Jiu Li looked up at the sky. By noon, it was really time for the beginning of the conference. As soon as Jiu Li said this, the semi-emperor strong man behind him became noisy. He waited for a month just to wait for Xiao Yang to come back to attend the herbalist meeting. Now the time has come and people are in place. It should have started the herbalist meeting. Seeing this, Xiao Yang smiled, hugged his fists and arched his hands at the half-emperors in the void. Then he opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Everyone, I also know that because of me, you have been waiting for another month in vain. I know that some of you must be impatient. Here, I personally say sorry to you." The voice fell, and Xiao Yang also bowed down. These acts were immediately recognized by many semi-imperial strongmen in the field. No matter whether Xiao Yang's words were sincere or not, they all expressed their attitude in front of so many people. If they were not satisfied, it would be a little boring. Put down his hands, Xiao Yang looked at the half-emperor strong men with a smile, and the corners of his mouth also slowly aroused a smile. People talk to others and ghosts talk. Although these people have not reached the point where Xiao Yang feels threatened, it is not a bad thing to make a good impression after all. Moreover, these people also know his strength. Since he can cross 3 stars without fear of his opponents, he naturally doesn't have to grovel to them. At the moment, this attitude is enough to let them put down all their previous resentments against Xiao Yang. No matter who it is, it's not a bad thing. Jiu Li looked at Xiao Yang's skill and his face was full of smiles. Xiao Yang's practice not only left a good reputation for himself, but also attracted a large number of herbalists for their herbalist meeting. However, just when everyone was ready to go back to watch the beginning of the medicine refining masters meeting, Xiao Yang, as the focus in the field, waved his palm gently, and a gorgeous fire suddenly emerged from his palm, making the temperature between heaven and earth rise sharply at this moment. Seeing this scene, the people who wanted to leave in the field stopped again and looked at Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang looked at Qin Zhong with a smile at the corners of his mouth, and then opened his mouth and said with a smile, "Hehe, brother Qin, which hand did this guy use when he hurt you before?" Qin Zhong was also stunned when he heard this plain and very words. In a moment, he quickly responded. After talking for a long time, Xiao Yang came back to the origin again. The people above the void also saw this scene and heard the words in Xiao Yang's mouth. Their impression of Xiao Yang immediately improved a lot. It's really a rare person to be so interested in friend. Qin Zhong frowned and thought for a long time. His eyes turned slightly. He saw a red handprint on his chest. The order of his 5 fingers was his right hand. Seeing this, Xiao Yang also smiled. Qin Zhongduo couldn't help but say that his eyes suddenly moved down. In an instant, on the face originally full of smiles, he suddenly changed into a cold look like Joyo yellow spring. A flash of fire flashed in his eyes, but Xiao Yang suddenly grasped the palm controlling the different fire, and the different fire burst in his palm, and then turned into a large firelight, quickly wrapped Xiao Yang's whole body. At the same time, on the void, Mo Zhai's face changed suddenly, his mind turned sharply, and quickly recovered the released soul power from his body. It's a pity that although he is not slow, under Xiao Yang's sudden attack, some of his soul strength has been traumatized, and it may be difficult to recover in the near future. Damn. You're cruel enough. Get rid of the soul power attached to him. Xiao Yang also smiled. His eyes were not allowed to sweep through the void. He collided with Mo Zhai's eyes in the void. His slightly ironic eyes made the latter more angry. Xiao Yang ignored it in the slightest. With a wave of his right hand, the strange fire in his palm suddenly sprayed out, burning the right arm of the old man who had fainted into nothingness, and at the joint, it was a piece of burnt flesh and blood. When his mind moved, Xiao Yang took back the different fire. While taking back the different fire, Xiao Yang glanced at the old man lying on the ground motionless again. For so many years, Xiao Yang has learned that as long as he is an enemy, he will never show mercy, let alone leave him a chance. As long as he starts, Xiao Yang has never left a living habit, and this person is no exception. This video will end here.